Today is March 3rd, 2018. I'm Cameron Wood here with Doug Brown to talk about his skating experience in life. Can you just tell us about your life?
Can I start? Yes, I sure can. I am from Ohio. I was born in Columbus back in 1973. And actually my father was a baby doctor. And he helped deliver me, but he was late. It's kind of a funny story in itself. His name's Charlie Brown, just like the cartoon. Even looks like him. It's kind of funny. My whole life we've had like, you know, Snoopy things show up at our house for Christmas. And like, do you have a sister named Lucy or whatever? No. And let's see, we moved to Worcester, Ohio a few years after that. My mom, she was a nurse. My dad was a doctor. I have an older brother who became a doctor as well. So here I am, the black sheep of the family. I did not become any of those things, but the apple doesn't always fall so far from the tree, because with everything I've accomplished, I have entered hospitals speaking to children and things like this. So being in Worcester, oh my goodness, I was engulfed into the arts. I used to watch the TV show Fame. Maybe some people remember that show. Kids today, what? But for me, I identified with Danny, a character on that show. I saw myself maybe one day being an actor or maybe being in a movie. That's where my heart was. And so I would enter myself in all these different little talent shows and stuff. And I started my own rock band called Poetic Justice. I took it from an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. And I would write and perform all my own original songs. And for me, boy, that was a good outlet. Today you can jump on a laptop, a computer, an iPhone, smartphone, whatever, and press a couple buttons and have some drum beats, this and that. For me, I didn't have those resources, so I would take a couple different tape recorders, I would multi-track, and I would write and record my own songs, complete with album covers, and I would even take it a step further. And I was so engulfed in being creative, I would do these pretend tours. So I'd have an itinerary. One day I would be in like Chicago and blah, blah, blah arena. The next day would be Japan or wherever. So I'd have this whole set here. And so one day, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. But I was just so into being creative and thinking big and, thinking, let's make our dreams a reality, even at an early age. Fortunately, my mom persuaded me to go to an audition of Tom Sawyer with Akron Children's Theater. And so that's what I did, but I was completely terrified. I went to the audition, and the directors, sing, okay, here we go. And what I would just go into my mind and think, well, I'm gonna pretend that I'm, performing in my backyard like I used to, or when I perform in my living room, the carpet strands, that was my audience. Outside, the grass blades, that was my audience. So I went into that zone when I went for this audition. And I sang, and about 20 minutes later, the director comes up to me and hands me this big black script. I'll never forget it. And in gold, it says Tom Sawyer. And they say, you have the part. Oh my goodness. So I look at this script, hundreds of pages to memorize. My first impression was, well, what can I do to get out of this? What excuse can I come up with to not do this? But fortunately, I stuck with it. Thank goodness. In fact, there's a picture here. This is kind of fun. Doug Brown at age 9. And I got that lead role, and it led to so many different other things. I got engulfed into dramatic arts and dance and theater. But it was a good lesson of believing in myself and putting my dreams into action. And I have my mom to thank for that, for sure, because she persuaded me to go to this audition. So with that, oh my goodness, I started to do other plays, and I became a childhood actor at an early age, and it really set up everything for the rest of my life, even when I got into music and the whole professional skateboarding arena. I wasn't shy behind the lights. And speaking of skateboarding, oh my goodness, I found that in 1986. I saw the movie Back to the Future. Right? At the very beginning, you see Marty McFly going down Doc's driveway, and I saw that on the screen. I thought, wow, skateboarding, that's cool. It's something completely different. I mean, now you see skateboarding everywhere. You go to a Walmart, skateboards, MC Sports, skateboards. Back in the 80s, it wasn't like that. Everything was out west in California. And I was into sports during this time. I would do basketball, traditional sports, baseball, loved it. A huge advocate of sports. But skateboarding, it was creative. There was no team, there was no rules. So I was very attracted to that. And it was all about being creative. A creative child, jumped into skateboarding, fell in love with it. However, I couldn't just go to the store and buy a skateboard at the time. So my friend, his older brother had a skateboard, and a real one, not one of these like plastic banana boards that you see, or did see. And he charged me $30 for it, which at the time I thought I was getting a good deal here. I found out later he completely ripped me off, but I took my little $1 bills and I got a skateboard. And wow, it became my anti-drug, I call it. It was something that I would use at that time when I was down or depressed to jump on. And I always like to tell people that no matter how old you are, you need to have an anti-drug, something that you can go to when you're down and depressed. And my skateboard, that was it. I also discovered this thing called the guitar during that time. So here I had my ducks in a row for my future at a really early age with the skateboard, the guitar. And I didn't do theater quite as much as I entered junior high. That was a fun period of my life. Being sarcastic, of course. Being an adolescent, I always like to talk about that time period because I went through so many changes. My hair grew it long, had a big metal dagger coming out of my ear. I was rebellious. I was angry at the world, and you know, when you're a teenager, you don't really know why. But looking back, of course, I can say, well, you're going through so many changes that you can't control. So for me, things I could control were, you know, the length of my hair, what I wore, what music I listened to. I wanted to rebel and express myself. And through junior high, I would love to tell you that I was a great student, but I wasn't. I went through a lot of adversity, a lot of hard times. Luckily, I had my skateboarding, though, and my guitar, because I didn't go to drugs and alcohol. I didn't go down a negative path. But I was struggling, and I was fighting with my parents a great deal. Because, especially my mom, because we were so alike. We have a tendency to hurt the ones we're closest to. And I didn't know how to express myself. If I could go in a time machine now, I would hug her and tell her how much I love her, and, you know, thanks for buying my tennis shoes, and, you know, the water that I took the shower with in that morning, they paid for the water. You don't realize that when you're a teenager. So I was going through some tough times with my parents, and my brother, he was the ideal, you know, kid. He was a couple years older than me, but he was getting good grades. He was in band and all this, and I was in band as well, but I was thrown out of band. I put some balloons in some tubas one morning, and they floated out over the... I mean, what was I doing? It was like negative attention. But again, I was struggling. I was trying to find myself, and I had that skateboard. Thank goodness, because skateboarding got a little more popular by 1987, 1988. I started to enter a lot of competitions, which I was winning, which was good on the self-esteem. Now, up until this time, I should talk about my mom, who was a big mentor and influence. My parents were saying, get a job. By this time, it was 1990. And so I said, well, all right. Taco Bell just opened, and Arby's, and Pizza Hut, and those were things I could go to, but I decided to be creative. I always had this internal power of being kind of independent. So I started my own skateboard shop, which was a task in itself. I got a loan, and the Worcester, Ohio Chamber of Commerce came to my house. You can imagine this kid with the dagger and everything, you know. And they're in their suit and tie sitting around me saying, okay, are you serious about this? And I'm 16 years old, and I said, well, yeah, I think I can do this. It's like a garage sale with taxes. I had it in my head, and I had a location, pay the rent, the bills. So I did that. I started the skate shop called the Skate Shack, Worcester, Ohio's first skateboard shop. Very proud of that. That was my high school job. But there's a mixed blessing about the day of the opening day of the skate shop, April 9th, 1990. I'll never forget it. Here's a picture I should show before we get there. This is that time period. the wonderful mullet, which at the time was just referred to as long hair. So that's me. It's all my little boards and everything. But the opening day of my skate shop, like I said earlier, my mom was battling cancer really bad during this time period. And it got bad. She was in a wheelchair. She couldn't speak on her own. And we were fighting so much during this time period. It was unfortunate because I just wish I could go in that time machine and hug her, tell her how much I love her instead of being angry and rebelling. But I didn't know how to communicate with her at that time. So the opening day of the skate shop, made a couple dollars. It was a successful day. But I went home and I saw my brother. He was shooting hoops like he always did in front of the house. And I looked in his eyes, and he wasn't mad, he wasn't sad, he wasn't angry. But I knew when I looked at him that sure enough, my mom had passed away. And she had died. So here's a moment of my life that's hard to talk about. I'm at a fork in the road. I could go down this negative path, which could be an easy path to go down and do drugs, alcohol, get into fights, surround myself with negative people, or I could go down that positive path, straighten my life out, get good grades, make a new me. So to honor her memory, sure enough, thank goodness, I went down that positive path. Because if I didn't, none of this stuff would have happened. All my dreams wouldn't have come into fruition. So I'm very fortunate that I did make that good choice at 16 years old. And so when my mom passed away, my dad and my brother and I, we kind of went into autopilot. My dad was being the doctor. My brother graduated high school, went on to college. And here I was. I had the guitar, still doing that, and the skateboard. Now when I graduated, I'd love to say, oh, I had this huge plan, big dreamer. But, I'd never thought in a million years I'd be a professional skateboarder. That wasn't in the cards. And I thought, well, I have a guitar. I kind of wouldn't mind touring with a band or something. So I had some resources. But skateboarding by 1992, 1993 completely died. It was the most uncool thing. It just, the whole industry collapsed. So I'm like, well, being a pro skater is not going to happen, especially being from Ohio. What resources did we have here at the time? There's no skate parks or skate shops, nothing in the 1990s. But I had my guitar. So I went to the local music store after I graduated, and Larry's Music Center. And I went to Larry with that courage that I had, which is a pattern in my life, even when I went to that audition for Tom Sawyer, when I went to start my own skate shop. I went into the store, asked if they needed a guitar teacher, thinking he would say no. And he said, look, give it a try. Why not? What do you have to lose? So my goodness, I grabbed my guitar and my briefcase, took it very seriously at first, early 20s, man, I'm gonna pay my bills. I ended up doing that job for 10 years. And wow, it was an awesome time period because I was teaching all different ages. It was like being a therapist to these people. I'd have women come in and tell me their problems with their boyfriend or their husband, and the student, all ages. And after each lesson, I would go out, if it was a kid, and I would talk to the parents, and it was very reciprocal. I had a great lesson on human beings, and oh wow, it was just so valuable to go through that experience for 10 years. And fortunately, during this time period, skateboarding came back. The X Games happened, and Tony Hawk's video games happened, which put skateboarding back into people's living rooms, into their consciousness, and skateboarding became popular. Now, during that time period when nobody was skateboarding, I was still skateboarding all the time. Because again, it was my anti-drug. It was my passion. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I was never thinking, oh, I want to be sponsored, to be paid to do this. Not at all. And I was doing a lot of competitions during those years and winning a lot too, because there's this whole new generation that was coming along, and a lot of my friends had all stopped skateboarding, so I get to show up at some of these skate competitions with my artillery of all my tricks, and yeah, I won a lot of different trophies, and that was a fun time. Skateboarding came back, and wow, we're getting into the year 2002, which was a huge year for me because the Gravity Games had come to Cleveland, Ohio. I heard it on the radio. I'll never forget. I was in the parking lot at Best Buy, and I heard, hey, come see the Gravity Games. And And so I took the day off teaching guitar, took my van up to Cleveland, took the hour drive, and I went to watch. I went specifically as a spectator. And I'm seeing these pros warm up on the ramp, on the half pipe. And I'm being inspired and watching, they're warming up, and I'm thinking, wow, I would love to skate that ramp. I have a lot of courage, self-belief, some strength. I went back to the parking garage, grabbed my helmet and my skateboard, and I went up on the ramp. Went through the security, figured, what do I have to lose? It was crazy. I could have just sat there and watched, but I wanted to skate this ramp. So everybody else on the top of the ramp's looking at me like, who is this guy? You know, the new guy, whatever. I went on that ramp to blend in, but the opposite ended up happening. It was my turn when they were warming up to go. I drop in on this ramp, and I'm just like, I knew if I wrecked that my credibility would be gone. But I'm on the ramp, landing all these tricks. The photographer shifted over. I do have an eclectic, different type of style of skateboarding. And they took notice, and I was landing everything. I had to have an angel or something on my shoulder, probably my mother, saying, do something productive with your life. Make a difference. This is it. So I get off the ramp, I grab my board. A couple kids wanted my autograph. I said, no, I'm just a guitar teacher from Worcester, Ohio. We're good. Kind of embarrassed, actually. But as I'm leaving, the couple came up to me that had a tent. They were a sponsor. They had a tent right by the ramp. They were a sponsor of the ramps for the Gravity Games, and they wanted me to be a demonstration skater the remaining days of the Gravity Games. And so I was terrified. I said, well, I don't know. Are you sure? Like, no, we'll pay you, get a hotel. The rest of the Gravity Games, you can skate all day long from 10 in the morning till 8 p.m. and just do demonstrations. So I said, all right, why not? Took the week off of teaching guitar, and I did that. And it was a cool experience. I met a lot of other pro skaters and had a heck of a workout. I mean, by the second day, I was duct taping my blisters and my legs were stiff. It was crazy, but it was a great experience. Now, during this time period, I still never thought, I could do this for a living. No, I was just having this week at the Gravity Games. But as I went home that following week and month, and so, the phone was ringing. They wanted me to really ship me out to all these grand openings of their skate parks, and they wanted to hire me to be a skater for their company. I said, rock and roll, let's do it. I was loving it. Now, making kind of a long story short, I ended up doing a lot of events for that company that led to being seen. They sent me out to California, San Diego, to the SR trade show and different events, and I met a lot of other sponsors. They saw me skate. I never sent videos out. I was just being seen. And so from that experience, I started to get paid. Yoker Skateboards out of Los Angeles put my first pro model board out, which was a huge deal. I mean, it was like getting a record deal. It was like having a CD in every Best Buy. Instead, I had a skateboard that was in every skate shop across the United States. So from that, I'm getting emails being, hey, we want you to come out and represent this, or grand opening of a skate shop, or whatever. So here I am, kind of this like circus puppy going all across the United States. I have a board that's in shops. I was on a deodorant stick. That was a fun experience. And body wash. It was in all the Walgreens, Dollar Generals. All this stuff is happening. So I had to stop teaching guitar. That was out the window because the paychecks for the skateboarding was taking over, and my passion. I started to get fans. I was reaching people. That's number one. That's what I discovered. It was like, okay, well, I reached a lot of lives teaching guitar. That was fun. But now I have a whole new audience of all different ages. And I never thought in a million years that my skateboard would be my microphone. I should mention, too, during my 20s, before I turned pro in skateboarding, that I was pursuing music. I had CDs out, and that's what I thought. I thought I'd be signing CDs because I saw myself doing that. And I had an agent as well during that time period that was booking me for different venues and small things. And so when I turned pro, I had an agent. That was a good resource. I said, well, stop calling RCA Records. Start calling Sobe, and and so I was getting sponsored, and sponsors led to paychecks. It became my living. That's how I made a living. That's how I paid my bills. But it took a few years for me to realize that I'm a pro skater. I mean, even the title I was kind of uncomfortable with because locally in Ohio, especially up in Cleveland, I was getting eaten alive by the rumor mill of like pro skate. What? Who? What? Because they had saw me before just as this guy, but here I am traveling around the country being shot out to do all these events and competitions, and what can I do with it? I had to embrace it. I thought it would last 2 or 3 years. I'm going into my 16th year this summer of being a professional skateboarder. I have to pinch myself because I never thought it would last this long. But being a pro skateboarder, great. I'm skateboarding all the time. But what's really important? It's reaching people. This is my microphone. My passion has become being a public speaker and author, and it's all because of this piece of wood and 4 spinning wheels has led me here to this moment, even doing this right now, and being in an exhibit or speaking at a school, a library, a detention center, and the books that has led to reaching people. Some of the stories are so heartwarming to me. That's my paycheck. I don't get paid a lot of money. I pay my bills. But a paycheck is when a mom comes up to you and says, my son read your book. He was 14, suicidal, being bullied, having an awful time at school. But he read your book, and he saw that you went through adversity, hard times, and you survived and came out okay. And this young man did a 180 and wasn't suicidal anymore. Now that's just one story, and I have a bunch of stories like that. That's the paycheck. That's what makes this really worth it, and for me to just keep going. I don't plan on stopping. People always say, well, what can you do when you can't skateboard anymore? Well, I always plan on keep going and skateboarding, even if I don't get paid to skateboard, but I've become the motivational speaker and author, and I want to do that for as long as I can. I always try to inspire people, hey, no matter what your dream is, I hope you don't wake up with that dream and go, you know what? I want to be famous. I want to be rich. I want to have a lot of money. I hope that they go, I want to reach people. I want to make a difference in the world. I want to make people be optimistic and have a good outlook on life. I mean, people are the heaviest components in our lives. I couldn't have done this just solely alone. I had resources and, to have an audience. And so I really inspire people to hopefully go that direction. I look at my parents. I said earlier, I was the black sheep of the family. Well, maybe not. The apple doesn't always fall so far from the tree. My dad was a doctor, and my mom was a nurse. My brother became a doctor. Am I doing surgery on people? No. But I am going into hospitals with Athletes for Hope and speaking to terminally ill children, and I can do something with my skill that makes somebody happy. And hopefully they can do the same thing to somebody else.
So, when you first started skateboarding, what was the reaction from people around Worcester? Was it like positive? Did you get funny looks?
No, that's good you asked that, because it was like that. In 1986, if you skateboarded, you would get people's traffic would slow down. I got a ticket one time for skateboarding in College of Worcester across the street. I was pulled over and got a ticket for skateboarding. And one story I have in Mount Gilead, Ohio, which is where my grandparents are from. I was skateboarding about 6th grade or so. And my grandpa came home and talked to my grandma and said, there's people talking about some kid up the street, there's a skateboarder and this and that. And it was me, of course. And the whole town was talking about the skateboarder. I was an alien. They'd never seen anything like it before. I felt like I was in a Twilight Zone. And skateboarding, oh my goodness. But now, of course, it's changed so much that it's everywhere. And
did you ever go ride behind a car?
Oh yeah.
Michael J. Fox?
Yeah, I've got some injuries, I've got some stories and things I'm not so proud of, but at my age now I wear a helmet all the time. I'm a huge advocate of that because you have to be conscious. I'm at my age, I don't jump off the top of school buses anymore, and I'm not out to try to kill myself doing this. I do it for recreation, fun, and I like to push my limits, but I know my limits, and a huge advocate of staying physically fit and eating right, and that's what's so great about skateboarding. It's such a good outlet for kids and adults to, have a bad day. I jump on my board and I'm in a better place. And it's fun. I mean, that's number one why I got into it. Not for money or attention or anything. I enjoyed it because it was fun. It's still that way. I have just as much fun going outside right now into a parking lot and just skating the parking lot like I did when I was 12 years old. Sure, I've been to some of the best skate parks in the world, and yeah, that's great and all. But at the end of the day, just that sensation of being on top of that skateboard with those wheels rolling on the cement gives me great satisfaction.
Here's a question. Do you think you stuck with skateboarding? You called it your anti-drug. Do you think you found it valuable because you loved it as the thing it was, or because it provided that outlet? Or was it a little combination of both?
Definitely a combination of both, for sure. I mean, it's done so much for me, especially through the years. It gets more sentimental looking back, like the payoff. It's kept me in shape through my 20s, 30s, and now my 40s. Yeah. I mean, I was always an athletic kid. My parents played tennis. And I was into basketball, and sports are so important to stay active. Dancing. And the treadmill, that's great and all.
Yeah.
And I work out a lot. I have a mountain bike. That's fun. But no, I would much rather spend 3 hours a day on my skateboard than being the hamster on the wheel.
Right. Where were the places, like, when you started, there was no skate parks or anything. So what were the kind of places around Worcester that you would?
Oh, we had our spots. Every town did. We'd go College of Worcester. I laugh because I see visions of their little campus golf carts chasing us throughout. That's why I got that ticket, I think. Yeah, there was lots of different locations. Or we would build our own little ramps. My mom was a real estate agent, and we would take all her real estate signs and duct tape them. And I made a ramp one time that was so ghetto that it was a great ramp, but it looked horrible. Particle board, again, real estate signs, metal sheets, anything we could duct tape and hammer on. It was right in front of my house, and one afternoon I come home from school. Where's the ramp? Where's the ramp? The garbage people took it away, thinking that it was garbage. It was my gold, man. One man's junk's another man's treasure. Yeah, we built a lot of ramps.
What do you think your craziest stunt has been? The one you look back on and go, oh, I should never have done that.
I mean, I have a few things I kind of regret, but I've been very fortunate, knock on wood, that I haven't, really hurt myself to a great degree. I mean, it's going to happen sooner or later, so that's why I'm smarter as I get older with what I choose to do on my skateboard. Kids today are fearless. I watch these competitions and things on TV, and oh my goodness, they're doing things I'd never even dreamed of. But again, wearing a helmet's important. I mean, I've fallen off of fences, I've hurt my leg, I've split my chin open twice. They're all war stories. But you know what? It's been worth it. It's been worth it to keep moving. Those injuries didn't stop me. And that's a good lesson in life, like Rocky says, it's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can get hit and get back up and keep moving. And that's one thing I've learned about with skateboarding, about life, is that you can take the hits, but you survive them, and you do what you can with what you've been dealt. You don't let the past define you. In fact, quick story that this opens up is my mom, when she had cancer. And she had it for a couple years, and she was this award-winning real estate agent. She was Citizen of the Year in 1983. She was the president of the Junior Women's Club. Nobody knew she had cancer during this time. People would compliment her hair. Love your hair. She had a wig on. And she taught me early on in life, you don't let those hard times define you. And so in my life, when I have hard times, this and that, it's like it could always be worse. You have to be optimistic. That's a heavy answer, I know.
Yeah. Do you feel like, with your mom passing, do you feel like that was one of those large life events where you were almost a different person afterwards?
Yeah, it was definitely a huge bombshell in my life, if you will. because it was one of those moments where like, wow, there's a change. There's like, we go through life not thinking about death really, and it's made me really live in the moment, you know, and I'm always that way. The older I get, I think we all do that to some degree. I'm very sentimental, and I think today could be it. So make the best of today. As I tell teenagers and kids and adults, but today is what matters, you know. So if you have a plan or a dream, now's the time to put it into action. People say all the time, you know, you've written a book. I want to write a book. And they want to know, how do you do this? They want advice. And I said, well, have you written it yet? Because if you want to write a book, you pick up a pen or paper, or you get the keyboard and you start typing. That's how you write a book. Then after you finish the book, then you worry about, no, should we get it published? What should we do with this? And I've always been that way in my life, being proactive, that if you have a dream, when I was a child, I wanted to be an actor. Okay, when I was teaching guitar, I was getting paid to have my hands on my guitar, and then it turned into skateboarding, and wow. So no matter what I do, put your dreams into action. People, when you're done skateboarding, what are you going to do? This train's not going to stop until I am not here, and I am here right now, so I'm going to keep moving, and I'm going to be positive and have hope and optimism and keep it going. Rock and roll.
So, what is it like being a professional skater? I mean, what would an average day look like to you?
Being a professional skateboarder, it's a strange title. Even now, it's like, I kind of cringe, but it is what I am. I've been paid for all these years. And an average day, it all depends. Early on in my career, 2002, like 2006, I call my rock star years. I was traveling extensively. And, but when you're home, I'm very boring. I get the groceries, I go to the post office, I do skateboard every day. But with the skateboard career, it is cool. It never gets old. I mean, whether I'm working on websites or there's always a project. That's what I love, because I love being creative. That's where my heart is. That's what I did when I was a child. So I'm just putting that now into the skateboarding. I like working close with my sponsors, whether it's like to design a ramp or a t-shirt or an ad campaign. I'm very involved and hands-on with my sponsors.
Did you like the traveling?
Yeah, in the beginning it was awesome because it was free. I'm like, it was awesome. You know, I'm traveling, I'm flying around with my skateboard in tote, and I felt like I was living the dream, especially when the ball started rolling. I'm looking over, wow, I'm in Vegas right now. My skateboard's on the couch. Man, I've arrived. This is cool. And and I love the different cultures. That's the best part of traveling, especially with skateboarding. Because skateboarding has this, a lot of stereotypes, and every town has a different vibe. I mean, the skateboarding in Ohio, the vibe's completely different than when you go to Canada. And so that was fun to see how people treat you, and yeah.
When you were traveling, did you like tour with a group, or were you on your own?
A bit of both. I preferred it when I was by myself, because I always felt like I was the businessman. Instead of a briefcase, I had the skateboard, and I was out to do a job. Work for the sponsor, this and that, do a signing here, speak at a YMCA. It was this whole itinerary, which I like. Whereas with a group, it was fun and all, but you could get a group of people, and I'm drug-free and alcohol-free, and I don't go to the after parties, and not 21, and I take my job seriously with the skateboarding. And when I would travel, I didn't want to do something to jeopardize my dream or the job I was there to do. So it's always very responsible, and I'd always sneak out to sightsee, don't get me wrong. I went to Vegas, man. I did the Strip, I went to see Roseanne, yeah. But I was in it as, I went to bed at a good hour.
So you would say that when you were touring, you were probably on the lower end of the crazy kind of doing things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could I tell you stories that have I been tested where I could have done bad things? Yeah, but I chose not to because, smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get caught up in that. So, like, if you're in a rock band, you can take part in this or that, or you can, I was never like that, even through junior high and high school. I made good choices, thank goodness, because the sad side is I've had friends who have gone down that bad path. And their dreams didn't come to fruition, and they have some sad stories that, I can look at and say, well, I'm glad I didn't go down that path. I'm glad I didn't make bad choices. I made some really good choices. I've been very fortunate.
So, during your rock star years, you were in a lot of different competitions and stuff like that. Is there one that you would point to and be like, this is the one where I was like on fire?
Okay, well, yeah, competitions I've done a bunch, believe me, and thank goodness I've done them because it's where I got seen. I don't have like a room full of trophies, but I'd say 2007 at the AST Dew Tour was really big for me. Just because it was one of those moments where, my goodness, Dave Duncan was, a big pro skater in the 80s, was doing the commentary. Here I am on the top of the ramp. He's the one saying my tricks as I'm performing them, and there's other pros on the top of the ramp that I had admired, and I might not have won the competition, but I walked by them and they patted me on the back saying what a great job I did. And it was one of those moments. 2007 was a good year for me because a lot of that stuff was happening where enough time went by where I got really sentimental about my career. Like, wow, this is cool. And having the fans, that's been neat too because I've been that kid. I've had posters on my wall of somebody and I know what it's like. So now I'm embracing being a mentor to these kids, and that's huge for me. I'll never pass up an autograph. If I'm at an airport and a kid wants my autograph, I will take that suitcase, get the poster out. I've been known to give kids my shoes. Whatever I can give to give back, to pay it forward, because that's what it's about. Even now, that I've crossed generations a bit, I've been doing this long enough, these young men come up to me and like, man, when I was 13, you gave me a high five at the Gravity Games or the Warp Tour, and I still have your poster, and that kind of stuff happens now. And that's rewarding because, again, I'm still that kid. I've been in that position, and it comes full circle. It's cool.
You wear a lot of different hats. Like internally, when you think of yourself, do you think of like, how do you think of yourself?
Well, it's a little dangerous because you don't want to get too into yourself. Right. I don't want to look at myself, I'm that guy. No, I totally jump out of myself, really, and I'm always myself. I'm good at that, I think that's important. I tell people to be themselves no matter what you're dealing with. If you're being bullied or somebody doesn't like what you're doing, what style of music you like, who you're dating, it's so important to be yourself because if I wasn't myself, I never would have landed in this arena. That's how I got discovered. When I was discovered with skateboarding, I was doing my own style of tricks with skateboarding. I've invented a lot of different skateboard tricks and got some backlash for it even at times, but it paid off because that's how I was discovered. So
how are your tricks? You said you had a unique style. What kind of separates your style from maybe mainstream?
Well, to me, it doesn't seem unique. It's just what I do, It's like if somebody sings with a certain, vibrato or something. Well, I grew up in a juggling family, and I use my hands a lot with my skateboard, and it just feels natural to be creative because that's what I liked about skateboarding. I see a lot of this new generation comes into skateboarding, and they watch the YouTube videos and emulate exactly what they're seeing. And part of that's not healthy. I like to maybe take something and then twist it and make it my own, and that's what I've done with my skateboarding, and it's just more rewarding. It's fun. It's like painting.
Was there anybody that you did learn from, or were you pretty much just self-taught?
Well, we had our skateboard videos. I could go into a long spiel of the history of skateboarding, Pal Peralta and Tony Hawk, and they definitely inspired me, and And Mike Vallely is a skateboarder who's a few years older than me, who I've had the opportunity to work with, which is cool, and do some events with, and be on a team with. Was a mentor of mine, and still kind of is.
When you came in, you mentioned your different design skateboards. Are they all your designs, or is there one of the
Yes, skateboards. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. As to date, I have 15 pro models. Yoker Skateboards out of Los Angeles made my first pro model, which is a huge deal. I thought that would be it, and they put out another one. And now I'm up to 15 boards, and each board does have a story. I'm very involved in the designing of skateboards. Outbreak Boards out of Connecticut is one of my sponsors right now. This is one of my favorite pro models. That's why I brought it with me. Wow, there's a story behind this. This is called the Medallion. This came out in about 2009? 9 or 10. Nevertheless, this is a medallion that my mom used to wear a lot. My dad bought it for her at an exhibit, a King Tut exhibit. And after she had passed away, my family said, hey, go into her room. Are there any objects or anything that you would like of hers? And so I was like, well, I don't know. There's scarves and things, but she had this medallion, which I have here today, which rarely makes an appearance, but this is the actual medallion. And it was photographed, the actual medallion, and put onto the board. So for me, this is one of them. I'm so sentimental about this. It's my favorite skateboard. And when I see a kid riding it, it's even cooler because, wow, it's such a wink to my mom. She's not here now, but she is. She lives on through me. And I think that's important in life that, yeah, we pass on, but we go on through people, how we inspire them. And my mom was a huge influence on me. So this skateboard, the medallion, one of my favorites. I might have another one here too. Do I have it? Oh, this is a fun one. Told you how Back to the Future started my love for skateboarding. This is actually me. I had the opportunity to get in the whole thing. And so it's my tribute to Back to the Future, which is fun. Big fan of the franchise. Got to meet Michael J. Fox one time, which was kind of cool. Because he's short and he made me feel tall because I'm not tall. This is the newest one. The Boombox, which is nice and 1980s and retro, which is me. I'm stuck in the 80s still. I mean, sentimental about the time period. Best fashion, best music. And skateboarding was great in the 1980s. Because it was a little more open on styles, and today it's a little more standardized, and this is skateboarding. Then it was so colorful, and you can look at a skateboarding magazine today and compare it to a skateboard magazine in the 1980s and see a completely different, vibe on the scene. So I'm very sentimental to the 80s and keeping it alive. I still do a lot of the same tricks that I did when I first started skateboarding.
Skateboarding kind of died off in the 90s. Do you have any?
Yeah, it did. The industry kind of got flooded, I think. And a lot of kids that were the core skateboard group was getting older. It just happens naturally. So you have kids, you go to college, and it just kind of fizzled, unfortunately. The scene had changed so much. Rollerblading got popular, and the times had changed. So it was kind of sad. It was a bleak period, man. You could not. I went to a skate park. It'd be like me and 2 rollerbladers, and they'd be looking at my board like, what is that, an old Tony Hawk board? The rails on the side, it was an old board. And I said, yeah, I still skate. It's fun. I never stopped. It was a fun time to get vintage boards, though, because everything was cheap. Nobody was buying skateboard stuff. You could go on eBay and have a heyday. Not now. That stuff's worth a lot of money, the old boards. And I had my skate shop. When my skate shop closed, all these boards, I had a storage shed filled with skateboard stuff. So I had a lot of skateboards that kept me through the 1990s. I kept riding the old boards for many years. Even when I first turned pro, they said, we got to use a new board. I said, well, all right, I'll try. And had my name on it, so I was definitely going to rock it.
Did you ever think about reopening the Doug Brown skateboard store?
Yeah, time. If I could have the time. Is that a retirement plan? I don't know. I would be a good skate shop owner, but my heart really isn't in it right now because it's one of those you'd have to spend all your time and energy. I'm not going to hire a bunch of people. It'll be my shop, have my shrine behind me maybe. I don't know. Maybe someday. Right now my energy's totally into writing and speaking and still skateboarding, but really any way to reach people, and now's the time.
Have you ever tried, how do you feel about, there's like new styles of skateboarding coming out, like I just heard of like the ultra long distance skateboarding is coming out. Do you ever do any of that? Or
No, skateboarding through the years, there's so many different trends that come and go with what's popular, and the boards change this and that. It's one of those things, like if it's not broke, don't fix it. For me, it'll always be 7-ply Canadian maple with, urethane wheels and metal trucks. I don't need a hoverboard. I get that question a lot too. Do you snowboard? What do you think about metal boards? Yeah, I'm gonna always stay old school, I'm sure.
So you said you never thought, wasn't a reality that like you'd ever become like a professional skateboarder. What did the younger you kind of think, or you just stayed in the moment? Did you have like a?
I've always been in the moment. The younger me definitely was going towards theater, which would be maybe being in movies, or that was where my heart was, or maybe being in a band. Not the skateboard arena, definitely not. Which is funny how it worked out, because I landed in the skateboard arena and here I am under some lights. There's a microphone, and I'm still performing. When I'm on a ramp, or if I'm doing an autograph signing, or if I'm speaking, again, it's all still because of the skateboard. So when people, I say, follow your dreams, that dream can lead to so many different avenues. It's like my dentist, he's not just a dentist. And he comes in, he does the stuff, and he's telling me about his life, his family, he's reaching me, inspiring me. So his job being a dentist wasn't just a dentist. You can always be more than what you're handed. Trying to reach people, there's so many different avenues, and for me, it's the books, it's the speaking.
For a very short time when you were young, you actually did some ventriloquism?
Wow, you did your homework. Yeah. Well, that's funny, because that was before I did the whole Tom Sawyer thing. That was first grade. The first grade talent show. I discovered puppetry, which isn't that cool right now, but it was for me. I was all into the Muppets, and so Charlie McCarthy was my first puppet, but it got me on stage and in the Daily Record. That was a big deal as a little kid, because I wasn't just Doug the student. I went to school and you stole the show, man. Like I was this little actor kid. I was always comfortable on the stage. Still am, I think.
What kind of actor did you think you were going to be? Like, or at least in your mind, you think action, comedy?
I just wanted to be behind the camera. It didn't matter, or in front of the camera, rather. There wasn't one actor that I really identified with. Well, when I was a little boy, people told me I looked like Tom Cruise all the time because my hair was a little darker, and Top Gun came out and I smiled, took shades, and everybody. So I got that through my youth. Now I'm told I look like Doug Brown. I have some funny stories too. I mean, I was at a skate park maybe a few years ago. I'm riding this ramp, and this kid's like, "Man, you're a really good skateboarder. You look like Doug Brown, but you skateboard better than him." So I'm like, right? I played it up a little bit. And then his friends come swarming around. They're like, no, man, I think that's that guy. And the whole thing happened. And I apologized to him, said, I'm just kind of having fun with the whole thing, that I get that once in a while. And so apparently I'm better than myself.
Well, it just means you've gotten better.
I guess so, right? I don't know. Or what video was he watching?
Gonna have to find that one and get it figured out. So, speaking of young skaters, what advice do you usually give young skaters? I mean, it's what you do a lot, but like about skating.
Oh yeah, I always encourage them to be themselves, to be creative, and have fun with it. These kids, they just want to compete. There's a game called Skate, which is fun and all. It's like horse and basketball. You do a trick, and then I will show up to a skate park that has all these wonderful facilities, ramps, this and that, and these kids are stuck for 3 hours in the corner just doing their little game. They're competing. I said, you got to relax with some of that. It's not all about that. It's about having fun. It's about being creative. And the tricks that they're choosing to do back and forth are standardized tricks. That it's the same tricks. Okay, do this, do that. And I'm a huge advocate of being creative. When anybody wants to play me in that game, they always say, well, you can't touch your board. There's these rules. And then that defeats the purpose. I'm all about telling that young kid, be yourself on a skateboard and have fun and be creative. That's the whole point, to be different. Huge advocate of that. Why are people so afraid to be themselves and to be different? No matter what arena we're in, it could be anything, but with skateboarding, there it is. You have this tool right here, it's your paintbrush, go paint. And I've seen this before. People tell a kid, don't do that trick, that's old, no one does that anymore. They make fun of them. I'll go over to that kid and say, oh, no way. Man, I do that trick all the time. Rock and roll, do it, have fun, be yourself. And preach it.
Do you have a favorite trick?
That's a tough question because tricks, it's like I'm a magician, a trick. Like David Copperfield here. I call them maneuvers. I've invented some. There's one called the DB helicopter where I flip it around with my hand. That's probably the most common trick that people say, hey, do that for me. And I don't know. The older you get, the less the tricks or maneuvers are important. It's just about having fun and riding my skateboard. Put some headphones on, cruise. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. In the competition time, that's fun. It's healthy. There's a good thing about that. But really, the only person I'm competing with in my sport is myself. Yeah.
So being an entertainer, when you were younger, thinking about being an actor, what brought you back to Worcester? Because it seems like someplace like LA would be like...
Yeah, I get that a lot. And I've spent a lot of time out west, especially in San Diego, where a Happy Meal is $20. And I've discovered that I can accomplish everything here. I own my house, and my sponsors are willing to fly me out. I like the slow life. I don't mind going out and visiting. There's a lot of resources with skateboarding. There's a lot of parks. But now, times are changing. My hometown is a skate park. There's skate parks everywhere. It's awesome that it's changed that way. It's not just a West Coast thing. And that's a sign of the times, too. You can go anywhere and buy a skateboard. There's shops. It's a healthy time for skateboarding. Thank goodness. I've benefited from that.
So what does Worcester kind of mean to you?
A lot. I mean, I'm still here for a reason. I could have left easily, and when I taught guitar, I made a lot of money during that time period. I saved my money. It's another thing I tell young men. Don't get the sports car. I had a minivan. People made fun of it, but it was awesome. It was filled with skateboards, and save your money. I bought my place, which I still own, and having my foundation. And so when I did turn pro, I didn't go out, and there was a time period where I was making good money, and I didn't go out and buy a lot of stuff. I just put it in the bank and sat back and said, okay, we don't know what tomorrow brings, so let's be responsible and smart with our funds. And Worcester, I went to school here. There's a lot of memories, and it's possible that I could move someday out of here, but I like Ohio and Worcester in particular, because it's my stomping grounds. There's a lot of voices in the wind, and I revisit a lot of spots where I skateboarded, and especially when I first started, like Avalon Drive right down the road. Skate down that road when I was, my whole life. My adolescence, my mom was going through her sickness, and when I was going through tough times, my parents, I didn't talk much about that, but I was sent away a lot. Detention centers, boot camps. But I always had that skateboard, and when I get on the skateboard, and especially in Worcester, and it takes me to that time period, and it reminds me how far I've come.